Welcome back to the CSS podcast. I'm your host, Dave Wolfers, along with Charlie Crawley tonight. Unfortunately, our third member of the wheel, Sam, cannot be with us today. He's recovering. He got a little stomach bug, but I think he's going down to his uncle's in Castle Rock, Colorado, to watch the Bengals-Ravens game with a bunch of Cincinnati folk that moved out there. So hopefully he'll be watching. He can give us some recap here of the game, maybe call in and give us a little up-to-date scores. But still, we're going to have another good show for you today. We have our ongoing updates. Crawley's going to play the Manning brothers and give us some Bengals highlights if they score, or if the Ravens score, or anything like that. We have our Bearcats 28-24 recap over South Florida. We have a couple high school football shout-outs. Crawley has another beer review, and Rick Kennedy and myself, we have our Manhattan reviews. And, of course, our special guest, Rick Kennedy. And we're going to talk all things Reds baseball to round out the night. But before we dive into any of that, please hit that like or subscribe button. Give us a 5-star review. Tell your friends, family, grandparents, anybody like to get some more people listening so they can give us some ideas about the show. We're on all of your favorite podcasting platforms. Plus, look for clips and full episodes on YouTube. All you have to do is just search for the Cincinnati Sports Scene. You'll be able to watch this video live. Tonight, as you can see, taking Sam's place, we've got a special guest. He's a former PR director for General Electric for 20 plus years. He also worked for the Cincinnati Post covering, he said, business and then also TV and radio. So he covered the Reds a lot during that time. And he's also a current author. He's writing another book, and he's just a wonderful, wonderful storyteller. Please help us welcome Mr. Rick Kennedy.
Glad to be here. This will be great.
Awesome. How are we all doing tonight, gentlemen?
We're ready to dive in.
That's good.
Doing well. Good Sunday night.
Good. How was the did you go to the game? Homecoming game, Crawley?
The UC game?
Yeah.
Yeah, I was there.
All right, good. Because
weather was better than I had anticipated. Took a jacket, didn't put it on, so I was happy about that. So,
well, that is good, because that's going to be our first segment in the week that was. We're going to switch it up a little bit since we don't have the Bengals to talk about, and we've got our host Rick here to talk more about the Reds. And so let's go ahead and Bearcats 28-24 recap. Crawley, what do you got? Besides the obvious that they should have blown them out.
Yeah, UC was I think the final right before game betting line was like 27 points, 27 and a half or something, and they won by 4. So obviously they did not cover. It was, I don't know. The game was. If you knew nothing about UC and you knew nothing about South Florida and you just came to watch that game, you would think they were basically equal teams. Which stat line showed. They both. I think they were I think South Florida rushed for 3 more yards than UC. UC passed for a little bit more, but it was a pretty even game, which is not a good thing for UC. Thankfully, they won. A little bit of it, I think, is. Every one of these teams, these American teams, this is their Super Bowl when they play UC at this point. We got the team that's won the league last couple of years, leaving the conference, just saying bye-bye, kind of kicking them to the curb. And so this is our chance to try to take down the king, and probably our last chance, because I would think UC will not be playing any of these teams starting next year, just as like a non-conference team. So, they did win. So ultimately they did enough to win. The rushing game came to life. Hopefully the Bengals tonight rushing game comes to life, just like the UC, since they really hadn't done much over the last, most of the season. Charles McClellan kind of was the MVP of the game, rushed for 179 yards, 2 touchdowns. Ben Bryant played decent, but got hurt. So kind of a weird play. And because I was at the game, I didn't watch replays. I don't know if either of you was watching the game on TV.
I was watching the game, but I was in and out, and I was watching a couple of other games at the 3:30 window, and I flipped it back and forth, and then I see Prater in, and like, hey, what happened? And they just said he went out with an injury, and they didn't, disclose the injury. And today in the paper, there was nothing that said what the injury was. So I don't know if it was concussion protocol, if it was shoulder or what, but he seemed fine on the sideline.
I think it was concussion protocol. I mean, he was sliding, and right before he kind of really in the slide, but a defender, as he was sliding to the ground, a defender went flying over top of him. And so I don't know if he got kneed in the head or, it didn't look like major contact, but I mean, with your head, you don't really need that much. So, and so he laid on the turf for, not super long, but then walked off the field, and then Prater was in the rest of the game. So I'm guessing it's just super, super conservative in terms of the concussion stuff. But I don't know other than that. Now, if you do watch the replay, I mean, if Bryant didn't get down as quickly as he did, and the South Florida guy actually made direct contact with Bryant, that South Florida guy should be thrown out of the season, not the game. I mean, it was as bad a targeting as you can do in terms of the movement. I mean, he's lucky Bryant got down, so he just kind of flew over top of him. I mean, he left his feet basically like a torpedo. It was like old NFL, where you just leave your feet, stick your head, full go as a torpedo launched out of a thing. Way. So
after today's NFL games, I want the old NFL back.
Well, with the roughing the passer.
Tom Brady just getting tackled for a sack, and all of a sudden the roughing the passer comes out. Are you freaking kidding me? That was horrible, horrible, horrible. And it was the same guy who called the
Josh Allen one last week.
Josh Allen one last week. And it's like, come on, man. Right. But I don't know. Rick, you got any takeaways from the UC
I just
game?
thought with UC, I think South Florida was better than their record. Clearly, they're better than their record. So, I mean, I think Charlie's right. Those teams are much more equal than they would appear on paper. Also, I'm just glad that UC has a bye week. They've got a lot of banged up guys. And, in general, the injury frequency in college football is growing year after year after year. It's getting very much close to the NFL. So I think UC will do well just to have another extra week off. But I think South Florida was better than. I mean, their quarterback's phenomenal. I just think they are better than being 1-4. So, like you say, next year the UC will have a better record, better teams they have to play. But I'm just glad they're on a roll. They should be 6-0. We all know that. So that's just what they do. They have to win, and they're 19, 20, 21-year-old kids, right?
Yep.
And
except for Ben Bryant, about 24.
So. Right. And you're going to have some unpredictability like this. So as long as they win, that's really the part that matters. Point spreads, we'll let the gamblers cry over that.
And the good news is, with Prater, with being able to bring Prater in, you have 1B. Yes. You don't really have you have a backup, but he's more of a 1B where he challenged for, there's if not more than half of college football teams would want Evan Prater as their starting quarterback. So it's nice that they could pull him in. He didn't have to do a lot. I mean, it was McClellan mostly rushed the ball when he came in. Prater, I think only had 2 passes when he was in most of the fourth quarter. So the defense struggled a little bit. That was probably my biggest negative of the whole game South Florida kind of took it to him on the line of scrimmage and they got to pick that up because they do have tough. It's glad I agree with Rick. The bye's at a perfect time because on paper, their 2 toughest games are their next 2 games. They got to go to at SMU and at Central Florida. So, on paper, those would be their 2 toughest remaining games. So hopefully these guys get healthy and they, come back. So.
Yep. That's what I have down. The takeaways, the bye couldn't come at a more perfect time for him. Even Pace is injured, a little bit banged up.
His arm, I could see that during the game. Like I don't know if he could even use one of his arms most of you talking about Ivan or Deshaun?
Yeah, Ivan.
Yeah. Yeah, his arm, something must have happened because he was just
kind of
hanging up. There.
It might have been stingers. I don't know, but he
never went out though.
No,
he just kept playing right in the middle of the big scrum, and he basically was one-armed.
Hey, that's a player. He wants his draft stock up there. But the next game they got a bye, so October 22nd. So that's a good for the UC Bearcats. I do want to give a shout out to the Red Hawks. They won on homecoming as well. They came back. Actually, they had the lead and they had to hold on to dear life, but they won as well. So good luck next week for the Red Hawks as well. All right, let's go to real quick. Let's high school football shout outs. I think there's only really one that we want to do. Crawley, you were at that game, I believe, right? Fairfield, Lakota West.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a one heck of a game from what I could tell.
Unfortunately, I was in the concession stand for most of it, helping my son's cross country team and parents. So I could see the score the whole time, but I couldn't really see much of the game. I did see most of the last part of the game. Halftime, Fairfield's winning. They were up 7, and Lakota West only 3 points at halftime. It's like one of those things where, at least from what I could tell, it's like, Lakota West is the more talented team, and the longer you play, usually the talent, rises up. And there was a good, what if hypothetical kind of thing that happened in the game though, and that I disagreed with the Fairfield coaches on in terms of their strategy. I think they went too conservative. So Fairfield tied it with 15 seconds left in the regulation, and tied the game, was down 1 after the touchdown. They were down 1, and my first thought was go for 2. Like, you're the less talented team, and you got the momentum here. Go for 2, win the game. I mean, everybody's expecting Fairfield's going to lose and maybe get blown out. I mean, here's your chance right here, win the game. And they didn't. They kicked the extra point. Okay, be conservative and go. Well, now we go to the first overtime. Again, the same thing happens. They score. They're down 1. Here's your chance. Go for 2. Lakota West, again, the more talented team, usually wins when you stretch the game out longer and longer and longer. Think of NFL overtimes, usually the best team and usually wins in those overtime games. So once again, they went for the extra point, and the next sequence, Lakota West scored, and Fairfield fumbled, and the game was over. So I think, again, that's my hypothetical coaching question for you. Do you go for 2? Yep. I think the answer is yes.
I think you have to go for it. I mean, on the old adage was on the road, go for the victory, go for the tie at home to make it into overtime. So but in that situation, you've got the number 2 team in the Division 1 on the ropes.
Yeah, in the state, yeah.
Yeah, you got to go for it. I mean, just knock them off. And
yeah, I think if that's my feeling is, if you're the lesser team, let's put it that way, and you got a chance to win on one play, you take that chance and win it.
Yep, but I agree. All right, moving on to Bengals. Any update there? I think Ravens have the ball.
Ravens had the goal. Bengals went 3 and out. They did absolutely nothing with the first drive. Ravens
was it
had
run
the ball.
Right? Was it all runs?
I don't know. It was during my UC talk, so I was able to do both things at once. So
you don't have a split screen on your computer there, Crawley?
And the Ravens do have it in Bengals territory. They're down to like 30 or 25-30 right now.
Great. So this could be. Oh, well. Well, we'll get updates as we go along. Next week's games at the Saints. Saints pulled off a victory. Taysom Hill ran for two scores, I believe. So that's
Andy Dalton.
Andy Dalton was the starter, but Taysom Hill was the main guy. All right. We are going to move, and Sam's not here, so I don't know what his I can't remember what his trivia question was.
It was who has the longest playoff, like not making the longest. Now that the Mariners made the playoffs, who has the longest? And it was not an NHL team, but a team out of the three major sports. Who has the longest playoff drought?
And do you want to take a guess there, Mr. Kennedy?
Boy, I can't. That one I have to think about a little bit. Man,
And maybe we come back to it. Let him think for a little bit.
We'll come back to it. We'll think a little bit.
All right. As he's thinking,
I think it's NBA, right?
You are correct.
It is, yes.
Mm-hmm. Yep. As he's thinking, if you want to play along, you can email us the answer if you think you know the answer at csspodcast@yahoo.com, or you can direct message us on Instagram at Cincy Sports Scene with your answers. And if you are correct, we'll give you a shout out, and then we also might send you a nice little sticker of the Cincy Sports Scene.
Ravens are up 3-0. Tucker just hit a 37-yard field goal.
Yep. So I'll let them kick threes. We got to score sevens. And I'll be happy. Okay. This week's trivia is mine, and it's football related and college football related. There is only one team in college football that has this mascot as a name. So once again, out of all the college football teams that play Division I football, this is the only team that uses this mascot for their name.
Wait a minute. I'm confused. Yeah. So this is a school that they're the only one that uses a mascot. Is there only one school like that?
Yeah. This is the only – yes. Yeah.
There's only one school in the whole country that only had that's unique mascot?
That, according to
really
CBS, yes.
Division I college football, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was thinking like UC Santa Barbara, they're the Banana Slugs, but I guess they don't have a football team. So
yeah,
correct.
Like, there's no way there's another school that has that. So.
Oh my.
Yep. So Division I guess FBS
or Santa Cruz, not Santa Barbara.
Santa Cruz. Yeah.
Santa Cruz.
Yeah. So go ahead and think about that.
Okay.
And we can come back with it. So Crawley's got his Oktoberfest. Rick and I are drinking the Manhattan. So we went with Rare Bird tonight, Wild Turkey.
Well, we're talking about the Reds, so we need a little Manhattan.
That's true. We do. We need a lot of Manhattan. We're going to talk about Reds. So that leads us into our topic of the week here. We've got Rick Kennedy as our special guest. Once again, we appreciate you coming on, Rick.
Oh, this will be fun.
Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your backstory, how you became a big Reds fan, and just, some of the things that you have been doing here, promoting the Cincinnati Reds and things like that.
Well, I lived my entire life in Reds country. My father was a Reds fan. My grandfather was a Reds fan. Like so many of us, we had that history. During the 1980s, when I was a reporter for the Cincinnati Post, I was the they called TV radio critic in the mid-'80s. And that's when I got to know Johnny Bench well. I did a big feature on him for Cincinnati Magazine. I did a long series of controversial pieces on Marge Schott when she was the owner of the Reds and doing all kinds of outrageously unethical things behind the scenes. But always, I'm 66 years old, so I'm a product of the big red machine. Dave has been in my basement. I have an entire Reds room, full of historical materials on the Reds. I'm obsessed with the early Reds, 1869 and all that, as well as the interest with, with the current day. And so I just, I think like so many people, I'm mindful of the fact that this is the first sports franchise that was professional in the United States, not just baseball, but professional sports team in general. It begins with Cincinnati. And so when we talk about the Reds, good or bad, I think there's a little bit of weight of history that we face because it is more identified with a city, arguably, than even, say, New York and the Yankees. Cincinnati Reds are foundational to this city. So I have a long history. I've been very fortunate over the years to know a lot of the players by being a reporter, and I know the sports writers well. And so anyway, that's where we're at, and it's a challenging time.
Yep. Usually in February you have, like you said, I've been over to your house a couple of times when you've had special guests come over and talk Reds baseball. And I think the last time I was there, John Uriarty,
right.
He was writing a book about Cuba and Tony Perez.
Right.
And then
he can still vote for the Baseball Hall of Fame. He's a longtime sports writer for the Inquirer. And so as long as you keep writing books about baseball, see, he could still go out there and vote for Cooperstown. And so he's always fun to give you insight.
Yes, he is. And then there was another gentleman who does the old time baseball games that was there as well.
Oh yeah, we have Greg Horde has been there, who's the longtime historian of the Reds, and also a guy we just call Knuckles, and he is the one who operates the 1869 Reds, the fake team.
Right.
Wonderful historian.
And then all your memorabilia down there. What's your favorite?
The favorite thing I have is a combination of Pete Rose's autograph and Ty Cobb on a canceled check. Because I interviewed Pete Rose in 19.
Did that check? Was that from his bookie or what?
Exactly. Yeah. But Pete was a funny guy because I interviewed him in 1986 when he was charging $5 for an autograph at the Drawbridge Inn. So I go to the editor and say, that's a business story as far as I'm concerned, right? So I guess it is. So I go over to interview Pete Rose, and what I wanted to do is basically attack him for charging for autographs. Bob Feller was actually the first baseball player who started charging for autographs, the beloved pitcher for the Cleveland Indians. So Pete's doing this, and this is, when he was a player manager of the Reds, charging $5. And I take a 1963 photo of him on opening day with his family. There's only one that exists. I stole it from the Post files. So I get in line, and I start asking him questions, and he is really combative, using a lot of F-bombs and being pretty mad at me about I'm just asking about why you're charging for autographs. But he kind of put me in my place pretty well because he said, look, I'm doing this for access. He said, you know how many autographs I signed for free in the parking lot before I walked in here? And you know how many autographs I will sign between the time I leave here and get back in my car and go home and go to dinner and sign them all night? I sign autographs all the time. I'm doing this for access. So anyway, I said, well, Pete, I thought you'd like to have this picture of yourself with your family on opening day, and he signed and gave it back to me. I didn't ask any questions. I got the hell out. Went back and wrote the story, and I still have the autograph picture, so I piece it with Ty Cobb, and I like that.
That's cool. That's great. Talking Reds here, some Reds news of the week. Yes, they did lose 100 games. They tied with the 82 team here, and we'll go into that here in just a minute. But, change was coming. We knew change was coming. We just didn't know how much change. The Reds fired 5 coaches on Thursday from David Bell's staff. First base running coach, Delino DeShields. Hitting coach, Alan Zintner. Bullpen coach, Lee Tunnell. Advanced scouting coach, Christian Perez. And assistant coach, Rolando Valles. All got the axe this week. Hopefully they'll find they're good baseball men, and they probably will find some more jobs if they want that. So
it concerns me because when you lose continuity with coaching, as you know, I don't have to tell anybody on this listening to us, baseball is a game of systems and tradition and philosophy about how a franchise plays the game. And the Reds seem to be losing that because we don't know what that philosophy is because we keep turning over coaches every year. And that's a little bit of a challenge that they have is that, so what is it they actually stand for? You watch, I know the Cardinals got swept this week. Cincinnati West, of course, run by Bill DeWitt Jr., who is a Cincinnatian, runs the team from Cincinnati. But the Cardinals represent a certain way of playing baseball. So we hope that as the Reds reshuffle coaching again, that they will stick to a philosophy of how you play. I was more concerned with the fact that they only have like $46 million of their salary committed so far. They don't have any idea what they're going to sign next year.
Well,
they have no idea.
I don't even think they're going to. I mean, it's going to be low level.
Oh yeah,
bullpen help, maybe a 5th starter. If
right.
I don't think they'll go after like a Mike Minor type that's going to command $10 million. They're looking at somebody like a Dan Straley type that's $1 or $2 million, and hopefully they can catch lightning in a bottle for us. But I don't think they're going to get any bats in. Bench help maybe, because I think they're going to play their kids, and hopefully that they will get this experience. And
Yeah, that was interesting about this year, right? Because it was one of those rare seasons in baseball where we saw everybody who's in the franchise. And so, and that part I actually thought was positive that you do that, but you can't just look across the line and say any of these guys are really ready. So we'll see. We got a couple tough years ahead. They haven't committed to signing anybody because they really don't know what the lineup even is going to look like next year at all. It's wide open.
It is, yeah.
I would say real quick on what you mentioned, the pitcher. Like, I think it still would be positive to. Now, don't bring Mike Minor in. We all knew Mike Minor was a bad signing from the minute they signed him. He was a washed up, injured play. He's been bad for a couple of years now. So why you'd spend $10 million on him when you wouldn't spend it on, I'd spend $12 million on Sonny Gray before I'd spend $10 million on Mike Minor. I mean, Sonny Gray had a pretty good season for the Twins. But anyway,
Tucker Barnhart,
I think it would be a positive to bring in a good, not a below average Mike Minor, but actually a solid, good, you can count on veteran pitcher for these young pitchers to kind of as a mentor. They're relying so much of their future on these three starters that, it'd be good to have somebody in here that can show them, kind of be that, that mentoring pitcher, but still be quality. Because that's their only chance of having, being better next year is that starting staff. And so that would be my thoughts on, they're going to have such, other than the Votto and Moustakas contracts. Right. It's not like they got a bunch of other money. They need to, they're just going to sitting around. So.
Yeah, that, and I think we need a veteran bat as well. Mm-hmm. Somebody who can either come off the bench and help us out somewhere along the line, because this year, it was, we just last month of the season, we just couldn't score runs. And our starting pitching wasn't bad. It was just, they just didn't have any runs. And
I remember going back to two games, day games with the Pirates. I guess this is like 2 weeks before the season ended. And between both teams, both days, I never saw a batter that hit over 270. Both teams.
Yeah. Well, and that's why both teams finished 62 and 100.
It was pretty staggering. I thought, oh my, this is tough.
Yeah. All right. So, what do you think they go, Rick? From here. What do you think? Are the 40 man's coming up? They have to make a decision on that. And I think after they, in my opinion, I think after they set their 40-man roster, because they have to protect some of those minor league guys from the Rule 5 draft. Once they do that, then I think we'll have a better idea, probably before Reds Fest, of the who we might be targeting or what type of player or position we might be targeting. What's your thoughts?
I think the first step is they went into 2022 reducing their salary structure by 15%. So the first step is going to be when the Castellini family decides on what that salary structure is going to look like after coming off a year where, now your attendance was 1.3 million. Think about 2012, it was 2.4 million. So, and all the other, so there's the economic challenges. I think, unfortunately, they're going to be stuck with a Votto salary and Moustakas. Does Griffey still have another year or two? They're still saddled with Griffey. That's what Castellini inherited from the Lindner era. So I think they're going to stay as uncommitted to signings as they can going into spring training. And I think it's going to be a very vague time between now and March, because I don't think they really know how much money they want to spend, and we have to find out how committed they are to how much longer they want to hold on to the franchise. So it was a good year to see a lot of people, see a lot of different folks that are going to end up back in AA and AAA. But I can't be specific because I don't really know how much money they're going to be able to spend. And they seem very content, even though the value of the franchise goes up every year. They are aligning their salary base to their operational revenues. They want to make it a business with, a stadium that they spend, $1 a season for. So they're fortunate to have us pay for the stadium, but they want the rest to at least break even for them. And that makes it very challenging. That sounds dark. I hate to be
trade.
Like this.
I was going to say, can we make a trade with the Cardinals for the owners? Is that a possible trade?
I know. Isn't that interesting? Because when you think about it,
I will drive Castellini.
Yeah.
I'll drive his limo to St. Louis and drop him off anywhere he wants tonight even.
But, you know, Castellini, and, you know, it's funny because Castellini and
his
DeWitt,
son, for sure.
These guys thought they were going to own the Reds together. That was the design. I've heard Castellini talk about it more than once. And it was just one of those odd situations where the Cardinals and the Reds pretty much became available at the same time. And so DeWitt, for many years, ran the Cardinals from an office right across the street from Great American. And then Castellini went for the Reds. And the Cardinals have something unique. It's called Anheuser-Busch. It's called Budweiser. It's the ultimate sponsor. And so you really can't make a fair comparison. People say, well, St. Louis is just about the same size as Cincinnati. It's not even a comparison. They have the most extraordinary national sponsor in their backyard, and they do an extraordinary job with it. And DeWitt knew that when he went to pursue the ownership of that franchise.
So bananas aren't bananas then, right?
That's right. That's right.
Maybe Castellini
right.
Maybe he could bring Jungle Jim in and they could tag team it. So
No, they have a struggle with sponsors. I mean, that's what they're trying to. That's what I think Marty and his wife are not going to cut it.
No. Laura Lane.
Well, after this year, they're really going to have a struggle. I think the toughest job in the whole maybe country, but definitely in Cincinnati is, can you imagine being a season ticket seller for the Reds right now?
Oh.
Sitting in that office right now, having to make phone calls.
Well,
that's like 21-year-old interns doing that job, man. They need. So
yeah, that's
bad.
true.
Oh,
but
God, I feel bad.
But is that a tougher job than during the '90s selling season tickets for the Bengals?
You have better salary share.
Yes,
the structure of the NFL is just better run.
Yeah,
it's a better business model.
The Bengals had more hope. That was all, Yeah, I had more hope in '95 than I had right now with the Reds.
Mm-hmm. It's interesting, I think, too, is that if you look, because we're going to talk about the 1982 Reds that lost 100 games and the Reds this year that lost 100. The city's dynamics were pretty similar in the sense that the Bengals had begun this great ascendancy during that period of time. 81 Super Bowl, you go from Kenny Anderson right into Boomer Esiason, Munoz is in his prime. It was an interesting time because some of the most memorable moments in Bengal history were occurring as the Reds were going through this tough decline. The story of how the Reds go from 1982, losing 100 games, to 1990 when they win the World Series is just a spectacular story.
Well, we're going to dive into that here in just a minute, but first let's talk about that 82 team versus the 22 team here. Mm-hmm. And we're going to go position by position. And Charlie here was one of the, he was the one who came up with this idea to see who we would take player wise. Would we take the player from the 1982 team or the player from the 2022 team? Now, what I did, I went on Baseball Reference and I got their top lineup, right? Baseball Reference said these are the top 12 players. And I got their ages. So you would take them at that current age. So let's go. We'll just go first base. Danny Dreesen, he's age 30, or Joey Votto, age 38. Who would you take right now to be your starting first baseman next year?
I would take Danny Dreesen. He was always a typical 269, 270 hitter, good fielder. Always lived in the shadow of, the fact that he was never going to be Tony Perez. But Joey, coming off this injury, 1 year left. I mean, he may just platoon next year. Who knows? I'd take Dreesen myself.
I agree. I'd take Dreesen, just even though he was pretty average, you at least were going to get, in theory, you could get, what age was he? 30 or something?
He was 30.
30.
Didn't he play for another 5-6 years or something after that?
Yes.
Yeah, he had 2 more years with the Reds and he bounced around, but it went.
Yeah,
but Votto was that this year, so, and he's 38, 39.
But he was injured. I mean, I'm going to take Votto. I believe in Joey
for
B.
one more year. No matter what, he has one more year.
Right. I will take him one more year. He'll be my if we're doing a team between Danny Dreesen and Joey Votto. I'm going to take Joey Votto. I think right now in his stage versus Dreesen in his stage, I think Votto still has more upside. I mean, I think he does. So that's just me. Maybe I'm living in the past, but
well, he's certainly my sentimental favorite because he is probably the only chance of a pure Cincinnati Red who will be in Cooperstown in my lifetime. So I was so hoping this year that he'd be healthy because he needs a solid ending to have any chance for that Hall of Fame ballot. He really needs to end strong. And so I'm with you on that with sentiment, Dave. I totally understand that one. And I'm going to miss him not being on the field. I mean, Joey's a lot like Johnny Bench. He's one of those guys where when Johnny was off the field after 83, it just didn't feel right. You were so used to seeing JB out there he was pretty bad when he was playing third base, and we'll talk about him in that team.
Yep.
But when he was a catcher every day, day in and day out, there's old Johnny Bench, and that's the way Joey is. It's just the way the franchise looked and felt, and you liked it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what's going to be tough about Joey being gone.
Right. All right, moving on to second base. We've got a 26-year-old Ronnie Oster versus a 25-year-old Jonathan India.
Isn't that interesting? They're roughly the same age.
Mm-hmm.
I'll go.
Yeah.
I'll start. I'll go with Jonathan India. I just think he has a lot higher upside than Oster ever did or did at that point and probably ever did in his career. Now, I'm not sold that Jonathan India is a second baseman. He was awful this year as a defensive second baseman. So, heck, for all I know, he might be a left fielder by the time the Reds are actually rolling along, hopefully, in there when all these young guys, since they have all these infielders coming up down the road. Mm-hmm. So, India was just not good this year. He can't, for a good team, he can't be the second baseman if he plays like this year. But his bat needs to be in the lineup. So,
Didn't he come up as a third baseman? So,
yes.
That would be a good move because your corners, career-wise, last longer. So if you put them on third or first, that's why they signed Votto for the long curve box. So I think you're right, Charlie. Second base. It was a rough year for him. Yeah. But I agree. I'd pick Jonathan India just on that. You'd want him on your next team.
Yeah, I think India's upside, power numbers are so much better than I think Oster had 42 career home runs, and India has 30 something right now. So, but India was hurt a little bit with that hamstring, so his range of motion was cut down. He actually he was on the Jim Day podcast, so shout out to Jim Day, and he was talking about he actually came in heavier than he ever been because he was lifting weights. I mean, he was bulking up. He wanted to get stronger. And he goes, I've never played at whatever he was, 210, 215, what he said. He goes, I was always right around that 190. And he goes, it affected me. He goes, I didn't realize how much, an extra 20 pounds does to your body over the course of, 3 months, 4 months. And he's like, I could not, I was stronger than I've ever been, but the speed wasn't there, the range wasn't there, and I didn't, he goes, I don't like playing at that weight, so I'm going to cut and lose it and hopefully get back to my normal playing weight like I was in college in his rookie year. So that, I agree with all of you. I would go with India, even though I do like Oster's fieriness, right? I mean, he was a spark plug, and he was that guy who stood in there turning the double play and and if somebody came in a little too aggressive, he would punch him in the face. So, but I think India has a bigger upside. Mm-hmm. All right, shortstop. So this is where we can debate a little bit.
Who are you putting up?
Well, that's the question. That's the question. So Baseball Almanac had Kyle Farmer listed as the shortstop because he played 60-some game or whatever. So we can either do Farmer there or move Farmer to third base because they had Brandon Drury at third base. And, Drury's not coming back to the Reds. So, I think we should eliminate him. So if we move Farmer to third, do we put Barrero then at short?
I would agree with that completely. I mean, we've been talking about Barrero for years. It's just time to see if he can deliver.
Or do we leave Farmer at short and third and just go with,
a shift?
Yeah. Like, Farmer, you got the left side.
You got the left side, we're going to shift.
Right.
Yeah. But
so which way do you want to go, Crawley? This is your game. So,
well, if we got to go with the Reds as now, I think we got to go Farmer third and Barrero at short.
Okay.
I would guess, if I had to put money down right now, that'll be how it'll start next season. You could even say, is Ellie De La Cruz be your shortstop, because that, long term, that's who they want to be their shortstop. But
I think he's going to be more.
But if we're making the rules of we got to use them as it is now, then I think you go Barrero short, Farmer.
Okay, so Concepcion, age 34, or Barrero, age 24. Who you got? Who you taking?
I'll let Rick do
this. If steroids were legal, I would go with Concepcion. Maybe even today's modern medicine, he might have been better. He had 287 in 1982 and still had some good range. But he does drop off the map pretty quickly after that. So I'm sentimentally going to say we could get 2 more years out of David Concepcion with modern medicine.
I'll agree. I'll go Concepcion. I don't have any feeling that Barrero is going to do anything. So I'll go Concepcion.
That's who I'm going with. At least Concepcion can put the bat on the ball, move a runner over instead of striking out, 3 out of 4 times. And Davey's been around long enough, and he's not going to allow that to affect him out in the field. The one thing goes against Davey is, we don't have that AstroTurf anymore, so those short hops, so his range will probably be cut down. But with the shift and stuff, can help him out a little bit there.
As a quick aside, will Davey ever get in the Hall of Fame when he gets to the veteran committee, or are there just too many good players like Dave Parker and others who were slighted that deserve it? I don't know. It's tough. I'd love to see Davey in.
Yeah, I don't think Davey will get in, just because, during his time, in the 70s, it was him, Boa, Russell, right? Ozzie Smith started to come at that later, and then that right there was the shortstop, right? Ozzie Smith, and everybody was compared to that. Then you had Jeter. So it's,
with Hall of Famers, you have sponsors. The local sports writers are your sponsors who make the case for you for Cooperstown. And I think they sort of mismarketed Davey, because they should have packaged him as the greatest AstroTurf shortstop ever, right? First guy that was out in short left, thrown to a one-hop to first. If they would have marketed him differently, it might have intrigued the other sports writers around the country. But anyway, I'm sidetracking. I apologize.
Oh, no.
He was a very, very interesting player. I mean, those of us old enough to remember that, you don't see that type of shortstop anymore. It was a very different game.
And the other thing that's a knock against him is, he was part of that Big Red Machine, and how much value did he add to the team in the national sports writers' view, right? Mm-hmm. Now, locally, he added a ton of value, and Morgan and Perez and Bench and Rose would tell you, he's best shortstop around. But nationally, they think, it's this Big Red Machine, that kind of thing. So I think he, if he played, I don't know. I mean, it's tough.
Yeah.
All right, third base then. We've got a 34-year-old Johnny Bench or a 31-year-old Kyle Farmer.
I'll start with this one. It's hard for me to say against Bench because he's my favorite Red of all time. Outside, Larkin and Bench are my two. But I mean, this was the end of Bench. So Kyle Farmer, as average to below average as a player he is, he still adds. I think he adds value. He should not be a starter. He would not be a starter on a playoff team. He'd be a great utility player that can play anywhere, including catcher. And I think that's his value. And and maybe in 2025 he's still with the Reds, and that's what he's doing. But I would take that over the next couple of years over what Bench had moving forward.
I would agree with Charlie completely. I mean, Johnny at that point, I mean, he was going to be much wealthier if he had gone to the American League as a designated hitter, but Fifth Third made him whole. They were supplementing his contract, which is why he retired as a Red, because he was drawn. I mean, it's funny. At that time, the Red sponsor was First National Bank, and they did a survey of Reds fans, and 3/4 of them thought it was the only bank you ever need, which was Johnny Bench and Fifth Third. So they made him whole. But he really should. Unfortunately, he would have been probably a good hitter in the American League those last couple of years. But I agree with Charlie. Kyle Farmer, we don't have many familiar players with the Reds, and he's one of them. And he seems to be a pretty good guy.
Yeah, I like Farmer in that at third base, other than Bench. So we'll go there. That's a clean sweep there. All right, catcher, 24-year-old Alex Trevino. Or a 25-year-old concussion-prone Tyler Stevenson.
Yeah. Protocol Stevenson.
Yes. Who do you guys got? Rick?
Well, I would actually, I mean, obviously Stevenson is a tremendous prospect for the Reds. I just don't know if he should be a catcher anymore. I think they should put him at first base. Or if they want that bat to protect him. He's already been seriously injured. I mean, you guys all know that. The history of catching, how many great prospects by 28 are done, just done. He's the next Johnny Bench. No, he's not. So if they don't put him on first, if he gets hurt a couple more times, he's done. But he's your player, right?
Yeah.
Stevenson's the best player probably in the Reds.
Yeah, batted .317.
Yeah.
For the 70 games he played or 80 games he played in, or whatever.
Opening day, he threw out 2 people in the first inning. That was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Probably the happiest moment in the Reds' history this whole year was the first inning of opening day.
Beating the Braves.
Yeah. So anyway, that's what do you think, Charlie? Do you
keep him
a catcher, or do you put him at first?
Yeah, the easiest question is that I would pick him over Trevino. I don't care if Stevenson's your center fielder. I'm picking Stevenson over Trevino.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Phenomenal.
Because I think he's the best hitter on the Reds, right? Moving forward. Yeah, it's tough because, I mean, it makes it tough because the Reds have absolutely nothing behind him at catcher. Nothing. I mean, they were pulling guys this year who were AA players that will never be above that, or
Chucky
guys
Robinson,
who have been waived how many times, like Romine had or whatever, that just were just giveaways. Like, they have 0 in the pipeline for catching. So
I was hoping Corky Miller might even.
Yeah, I'm surprised he would have probably been the next one.
Coach and date and bring him down for one last hurrah.
Maybe they would have pulled Jason LaRue and they could have taken Cueto's spikes out of his head or something, to put him back behind there again. So that's my only concern if you move Stevenson to first, is you have a 0 at catcher.
Yeah.
And so if you had something behind him, then it makes all the sense in the world, because they don't have a first baseman either, really, right now in the minors, unless you just transform somebody and make somebody a first baseman. So that's what makes it more difficult for me, just to say move Stevenson to first, because catching is so important, and he could be the best hitting catcher in the National League. So
yeah, he wants to catch. He was also, I listened to the Jim Day podcast again, and when he was on talking about his injuries, and, that was one of the questions that Jim posed. He said, hey, it's coming. And Tyler said, nope, unless the Reds, want me to go there, I really don't want, I've been a catcher all my life. I want to catch. He goes, my concussions, if you look at my concussions, they were fluke injuries. They were fluke. It wasn't a typical concussion, banging. He goes, I've been hit harder and never had a concussion. And, in this injury here with the collarbone, he goes, that was a fluke injury, right? It was just a foul tip, boom, boom. And he's like, I want to be a catcher, now I'm not opposed to moving, but I want to start out as catching. I want to catch as long as I can. And then, if I need to, sub for Joey Votto at first, or be a DH here and there to give me a break here and there, yes, I will do that. But, I want to be a catcher. And he's like, part of that is just because, I'm pride. I got pride, and I'm proud of catching, and I love to be involved in every aspect of every pitch. And so, he makes a good sense. He's got a new helmet that he went hockey style. It has some springs on it, so if it hits, a foul ball hits him, it's almost like a shock absorption right there and mechanism. So he said he's taken a couple when he got it, and he could hardly feel it. So he thinks that the concussions from foul balls, etc., will be a thing of the past. But catching is a dangerous spot, and it's just one of those things that he's willing to accept that role and be the the catcher for the Cincinnati Reds. And I think you got to go with that, because as a player who played this game and at a high level, when I got moved off shortstop and I played second base or I played outfield or third, I wasn't comfortable there, and it affected me. And you put me back at short, somewhere where I've played all my life, it just was like home. And I was more relaxed playing defense. I was more relaxed at the plate, and that's what Tyler was mentioning. Like first base, yeah, I can play, but I'm just not as confident or as comfortable as when I'm behind the plate. I don't know, if that makes sense.
I think it's interesting if you look back to the 50s, way back. Casey Stengel managed Yogi Berra very well, because now we view Yogi Berra as one of the greatest catchers ever. But he rarely caught more than 100 or so games a year, because they were always putting him in left field or first just to protect him. So getting back to Charlie's original comment, for Stevenson to be successful as a catcher, they're going to need a really good backup catcher, maybe, because it's just a different game. I heard Bench recently talk about catching with everybody throwing 100 miles an hour, and he talked about Stevenson's injury. He said, well, foul tip off the shoulder today is so different than when I was playing, because they're throwing so fast. So the reactions to everything are different. The wear and tear on a modern catcher today. Look at Molina, man. He's like, oh boy. I know he's older, but it's also you look at the wear and tear. So I agree with you. He should be a catcher, but they also have to think about how they protect that talent.
Yep. All right, left field. Here's
quick
the
update here, by the way.
Yep.
Not good. Ravens 10-0. The Bengals had the ball 4 times and 3 3-and-outs and 1 4-play possession. That's it. The offensive line looks like they're playing against the Cowboys again, and the whoever they played in the first Steelers. Burrow is getting the hell beat out of him.
Oh,
great. All right, move. Another one of those baseball almanacs had a guy who we traded, Tommy Pham. So we're going to scratch him off the list.
He'll be available next year. Bring him back.
Yeah, he will be.
Well,
we can bring him back.
Again.
The Red Sox ain't keeping him.
Yeah.
Yep. Nope. So we've got Eddie Milner, left hand.
I'm going to Eddie Milner right now.
Yeah, I'm going Eddie Milner as well. Jake Fraley, I have a better chance of hitting a left-hander than he does.
Oh, yeah.
So
it's horrible.
Well, I mean, so I'll take Eddie Milner, get the speed out there, plays a good outfield. I mean,
but in today's game, would Eddie Milner bat against a left-handed player? Left-handed pitcher.
Good question.
I don't think he would.
Was he left-handed?
Because Gary Reedus played left field, and then because Gary only played 20 games in '82, and '83 is when Gary came up. But that's when Eddie moved to center field. But back in that day, they didn't do the righty lefties, right? So
I don't know what was
today's game.
What was Milner's stats against left-handed pitching? Because he actually batted against left-handers.
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but I mean, he didn't bat over 2 something.
He hit 268 for the season. That's a good question. He probably hit 220 against lefties. He just, like a lot of that team, he had no power.
No.
And of course, it's a different game today with smaller fences, and that's the one weak thing about it. But he did have some good years, and he was healthy.
Yep. Defensively,
very good.
Very good defensive play.
I'll take
arm wasn't great. I mean, I would take Eddie Milner as well. I liked Eddie Milner growing up. Not as much as Gary Redus, but I did like Eddie Milner. So Eddie Milner, center field. I think I know where we're going on this one too. So we've got 31-year-old on the decline, Cesar Cedeno, or 27-year-old injury-prone scooter boy, Nick Senzel.
Well, Cedeno retires in 1986, so they get 3-4 more years in the majors out of them. He was not bad in 83 and 84. Senzel, you can't even get a full season. That's just pitiful. I don't know if you guys remember. In the 70s, after Willie Mays retired, it was always everybody was going to be the next Willie Mays. And Cesar Cedeno was unbelievable. Won Gold Gloves. Then he had some weird murder case. Do you remember that in the off season?
No, I don't.
Yeah. Oh my! In the late 70s, was never the same again. But he was good in 82. I mean, he hit 289. I think he hit in the 280s the next couple seasons after. So it really comes down to, guys, how long are we counting on these guys being with us? Senzel may be lucky to be in the major leagues another year. I'd go with Cedeno.
I agree.
Yeah, I mean, sure, I'll go Cedeno. Unfortunately, I'll go
just
Cedeno.
Keep him out of the bars. Yeah, keep him out of the bars.
Exactly.
Keep his lawyer close.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know. I get Senzel. The problem with Senzel, there's a lot of problems, but one of the biggest things when you just think about Senzel is just that he was supposed to be so good. I mean, he was so good in the minors, second pick overall, so good in the minors, all these expectations, and that's what makes it so just frustrating.
Well,
he just hasn't done anything in the majors.
Injury bug hit him. I mean, injury bug hit him, and that's another person who they fired. Wasn't even a coach. They fired their director of the medical director as well. So, not Krimchek. He needs to be gone too. But the other whoever in charge of the trainers and stuff, the Reds are looking for a new person there as well, just because that's unacceptable according to Nick Kroll. How many injuries that they've had. And
so I reluctantly say Cedeno. I would love to say Senzel, but I just don't.
I would too. I mean, I think Senzel, you leave him on the infield, but they wanted his bat and stuff. The quickest way is, hey, we need outfielders. And, they turned Billy Hamilton from a shortstop into a center fielder. They could do that with Nick Senzel, and it just didn't work.
He led the league, I think. He must have led the league in fly balls to the warning track. His agent must be telling him go for the long ball. And I remember, again, going back to the last couple games I saw against the Pirates, he just kept hitting lofty fly balls to the warning track. He kept trying to hit home runs.
Maybe he needs to get with India. Maybe he needs to go on India's weightlifting program.
Yeah, I think it's just he's been mismanaged.
Yeah, I think he's been more mismanaged than anything else.
Yeah,
so
I think so too.
All right, so now this is probably the toughest one of the night. Right field.
Aquino versus someone's going to be tough.
Yeah. Aquino, 28-year-old Aquino versus 23-year-old Paul Householder.
Oh, okay, I see why. Because you can't pick. I'll go first. I'm picking neither. I literally cannot pick one of those two. I mean,
gotta pick one, man.
Well, Aquino will not be on the. He cannot be on the team 2 years from now. I mean, the only reason he'll be on the team next year is because they literally have nobody in the outfield right now. So he will probably be on the team, but he cannot be on the team 2 years from now. He is awful. Yes, he can throw people out. He can throw people out, sure, but that doesn't start you in the major leagues. So
here's the
and Paul Householder obviously nothing. So I can't pick one.
Come on, Charlie. Householder out hit Aquino by hitting 211 in 1982. So, but Aquino is a pretty freaky looking guy. So he's entertaining to watch. But it's so terrible. I mean, a good pitcher just
Punisher.
A good pitcher just has fun.
He punishes us watching him.
Oh, he does. This is rough. I mean, we're laying ourselves bare here.
But that 14 home runs in the month of August, baby, that's why he's still here.
Yeah.
That is why he's still here. Because if we could just fix that.
I'll let you guys pick. pick over that with that too. I cannot go with
I'm going to go Aquino. I hate to say that, but Householder was a flash in the pan, man. You know,
He had no power. He had no power at all.
Nope.
So at least Keno maybe will hit a home run here and there. But
right, he can run into one. You know, I mean, this might be our starting lineup, but we got a bench player who might actually come in and take Aquino's place, and Aquino goes to the bench for that pinch hit home run in the bottom of the ninth to win a game for us. But all right. And the only other thing, starting pitching.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say a 25-year-old Mario Soto, which he was in the league 1980, I think was his first full year with the Reds. Like he appeared in like 50 some games. He was 10-7, I believe, with the Reds that year. And he started like 12 games or 14 games for him. So he came in, he was all over the place. Or you could take one of your three rookies. I left it up, either Hunter Green, which probably has the most comparable stats as far as innings pitched, or Ashcraft or Lodoto. You guys can make the decision which one, if you're going to take any of those over Soto, which in 82, Soto was pretty good.
He was 14-13, ERA 2.79 in 1982, and just got better. Yep. The other wild card was Seaver. Dave and I talked before this podcast. Seaver was 14-2 in 1981, and he comes back. He's 5-13 in 82, with an ERA of over 5. But then would play 4 more years with a fairly decent ERA around 3.50, 3.60. And then we had Bereni. Remember Bereni?
Yes, Bruce.
Bruce Bereni had an ERA of 3.36. So, boy,
we'd take that now.
We'd take that now.
Yeah.
Pallone was 397. Yeah. So, that was a mysterious team. Seaver really let them down, and I would take almost all the pitchers from the 82 team. And I think Lodoto, though, I would never give up on him.
No.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, how many Reds have we given up on? And all of a sudden 3 years later, they go, oh, my goodness, look at him go. So I think with him and Green, those would be 2 of your starters I would pick. And then I would take Soto, obviously, and I'd take Seaver. That's 4 years.
Seaver's that veteran that comes in and teaches kids how to pitch.
He pitches 4 more seasons after that, and it was respectable. He just had that one horrible year.
Yep. I mean, I think it's probably a clean sweep. Upside. I don't know. Soto was pretty gosh darn good.
Oh my goodness.
For a while. He was, and I think it was in 83. The next year, he finished second in Cy Young, and like he was like 9th in MVP voting or something like that.
Right. 83, 84, 85. He just dominated the league.
Right.
Oh,
and then he started to tail off, and I noticed that his walk to strikeout ratio was increasing or decreasing. Back in those days, or back in 82, at 83, at 84, it was something like 3.6, 2.9 strikeouts per walk. And then in 85, 86, it was like 1 point something. So either they were laying off that changeup, and because he had a lot of walks.
He lost control as he got older.
Yeah.
He was very much like Maddox, very much like Gary Maddox when he was in his prime. He just completely controlled the plate and the umpires. Knew he did, and so he got the calls. He was great.
I'll go. I haven't weighed in on this, so I'll take Soto, and then the rest of them I'll go. Well, I would take Green and Lodolo as a combination over anything from the 82 team, because I think Green and Lodolo have the chance to be superstars.
Special.
They are. Yep. You're right.
Yep. So I'll take the upside of those two. I would take Mario. If I had to only pick one player total, I would take Mario Soto. But as a beginning of a staff or least two guys, I would take Green and Lodolo because I just think those two physically have the ability. I mean, Hunter Green could be the best pitcher in Reds history based on his stuff.
Yeah.
And Lodolo already was the best starter this year as a rookie. So I would take those two over an old Tom Seaver and those other guys, Bob Shirley and whoever else was rounded out that staff.
John Smiley, Frank Pastore.
Frank Pastore. That's Frank Pastore.
Frank Pastore was on that team.
Yeah.
So that's
they only had a 4-man rotation back then too. So, Soto that year, I think, or the next year, 279 innings pitched. Yeah.
So there you go.
And in the bullpen, they had Tommy
Boom Hume.
Yes. Who actually wasn't bad in '82. He had an ERA at 3.11.
Yeah, but then it got worse.
It did go bad.
It went bad in a hurry.
It went bad fast.
Yes, it did. All right, so real quick, that's our recap for that. We had
Bengals just scored, by the way.
Right,
Bengals just scored a touchdown. Hayden Hurst.
Nice.
Good.
So Crawley and Rick went with Danny Dreesen to my Joey Votto. We all had a clean sweep of Jonathan India and Davey Concepcion at short, and also Kyle Farmer at third base. Plus our catchers was obviously Tyler Stevenson. Clean sweep the rest of the way. Eddie Milner, Cesar Cedeno. I picked Aquino. I don't know if the other two had any guts. I know Crawley didn't. He didn't want to. He didn't want to. He was playing. He was playing. If you hit it to right field, it's an automatic out. It's like wiffle ball games back in there. You got to hit it past, on this side of the shift. So Aquino, and then we all went with Soto if we had to choose one. So pretty much, there's only a couple of them that were a little different. That was 82 in the past. 22, we're going to put it in the past, and we'll just look forward here. And speaking of the future, past, present, and future, Rick, I know you do some things here locally with the Reds as far as Spring Grove Cemetery.
Yes.
You want to share a little bit about that, what you do, and
Sure.
how people can maybe contact you and get involved?
Yes, I'm what they call a docent. I didn't know what that meant until I was certified to be one, which is a tour. I do the tours of Spring Grove Cemetery, which in the Reds' history has some wonderful, wonderful folks who are hanging out there 6 feet under. Charlie Gould, the first baseman for the 1869 Red Stockings, is buried there. A guy named George Ellard, who owned a sporting goods store, who decided, I'm going to put the Reds in white uniforms with red stockings, hence the Cincinnati Red Stockings, is buried there. But there are two players who are in Cooperstown in the Baseball Hall of Fame in Spring Grove Cemetery in Cincinnati, the nation's second largest cemetery. They're both from the 27 Yankees. Do you guys dare venture to ask who they are? Would you try to make a guess? Who are those 27 Yankees Hall of Fame members? These were guys who were teammates with Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. Actually, well, that's misleading. There's a manager and a pitcher. I'll let you guys in. Charlie's like, you're killing me here. Miller Huggins was a law graduate from UC. He was a law graduate from the University of Cincinnati and would be the manager of the 27 Yankees. And Wade Hoyt was their ace pitcher who would come to Cincinnati as a longtime broadcaster.
All right.
And when the Reds went from Burger Beer to Shaneling Beer as their sponsor, those were the good old days in the mid-'60s. Wade said, I can't do it because he was an AA guy. And so when the Reds, sponsored by Burger Beer, kept Wade when he had an alcohol problem. And so, isn't that great?
Is that why his nickname was he his nickname Dummy?
That was Dummy Hoy.
Oh, Dummy Hoy. Okay. All right.
So I'll tell you one really fast question, one fast story. So when I did this exercise at Spring Grove Cemetery, I shared with the leadership of the cemetery that, as a PR guy at GE, I had a lot of New York reporters who were Yankee fans. So on the way, take them to the airport, I'd pull them into Spring Grove Cemetery and say, I'm going to show you the manager, the Miller Huggins, the manager of the 27 Yankees. And Lou Gehrig and Babe Ruth came here and cried over his grave like babies. I kind of made it up, you know. It sounded good. So I shared this with the folks at Spring Grove Cemetery, and an elderly gentleman by the name of Dale Hoyt, who is the great nephew of Wade Hoyt, said, Rick, it actually happened. My great uncle took Wade Hoyt. Wade Hoyt took Babe Ruth to Miller Huggins' grave at Spring Grove, and the big man cried like a baby. So that is the involvement there with Spring Grove Cemetery. And I'm working on a specific Reds tour for Spring Grove, because a lot of the very, very early players there's some great players buried there. Heine Grove, remember Heine Grove, Charlie, 1919. He had the big fat bat the year they won the World Series. He's buried there. Heine Grove is there. There's a number of those kind of folks, but it's an old franchise, and that's why I get very emotionally sad when I look at the outcome going forward, because it is a big part of our city.
Yeah, and moving forward, I know we briefly talked about, next year's team. We don't know, the money situation, those type of things. But if you look into your crystal ball and you want to play Nostradamus, Rick, what do you see? Where do you see this franchise in, 5 years, 10 years?
I worry about whether it's going to be here. I seriously worry about whether the Reds will actually be in Cincinnati in 5 years. They have so many things going against them. There's the attendance problem, just to start with. Okay, so biggest drop in, 38 years or something. There were 1.3 million last year. Season tickets now. COVID really hurt the franchise because of season tickets. We talk about the 82 Reds. Cincinnati then was the 24th largest media market in the country. Today they're 37th. So it's a difficult market to compete in MLB. The television situation, to quote Donald Trump, is a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. Back in 82, you could have a TV with your rabbit ears and watch Channel 5 and watch every game. Have you guys seen the announcement on television next year, the streaming and all this? If you figured out, would you explain it to me? Because it's gone from just cable to now streaming at $20 a month. So now the television contract, and Castellini said 5 years ago, if I don't get a Reds network, I'm in trouble. So they have a attendance problem. They have a television problem. Their radio affiliates have gone down. Carl Leonard did a sweetheart deal for himself for the Great American naming rights for the stadium. If you want to hear a crazy comparison. So the naming rights for the Reds, for the stadium, calling Great American, they make, this is ridiculous, $2.5 million a year. That's it for Great American Ballpark till the year 2030. Are you kidding me? So how about our buddies down there at Atlanta? Well, they're making $10 million. Of course, you get into Los Angeles, you're talking $25 million a year. So there's a number of structural things financially working against the Reds. I mean, almost like just this force of the bad naming rights deal in the stadium. The television deal right now is a big cloudy mess. The radio affiliates are declining. And of course, you have attendance going down. Phil Castellini on opening day was just telling everybody the truth. We're in trouble. We are in deep trouble. And if you guys, I know you guys followed the spring negotiations, the MLB negotiations, the players union negotiations against the owners. They want a European model. They want 3 or 4 teams in Chicago, 3 or 4 teams in New York, 3 or 4 teams in LA, create intercity rivalries that drive up television revenues. The last thing the players union wants are the Cincinnati Reds, the Pirates, the Brewers, the Royals. They will be thrilled when they're gone. So I know that sounds really dark. We're always going to be a great baseball town, but I don't know how long, 5 to 10 years from now, are the Reds really going to be in Cincinnati? Now, the one thing they have going for them is the agreement on the stadium itself. That runs now for at least another 10 years at $1 a season or whatever. But you have Nashville wanting a team. You have Las Vegas wanting a team. San Jose, the 10th largest media market in the country, wants a team. 10th largest. We're 37. So if you're the Castellinis and the value of franchise has been growing year after year after year, that's the irony. They want to make it a business that makes money at the same time the actual value of the franchise goes up. What do you do? I sure hope it doesn't happen. But I'm worried about Phil Castellini was just telling the truth on opening day. I know it made everybody mad, but he was just telling the truth. They were so close. They were so close. 2012, they go deep in the playoffs. 2013, they go deep in the playoffs. The whole franchise would look different today. They missed all that broadcast opportunity. So we'll see. I mean, but you never know. The team in 82 was bad. Meanwhile, in 82, they signed a guy named Tom Browning, just some kid out of high school. 83, they signed Chris Sabo, Joe Oliver, Lenny Harris, Kurt Stillwell. 85, Pete Rose makes sure they signed Barry Larkin. 86, Eddie Taubensee. 87, Jack Armstrong and Reggie Sanders. So maybe we just make a bunch of good draft picks in the next 4 or 5 years, and everything will look different. Please, Lord. Lord, be involved.
There is, I guess that's the crux of everything, right? The draft picks, yes, you can make draft picks, but can you develop those draft picks,
true.
Right? So and I think that's what the 80s Reds had, a very good farm system. And like you said, when we first came on, is like they had an idea of what they wanted to do, an ideology of who they were. And this Reds team, I mean, look, they don't know. I mean, they got rid of how many pitching coaches? I mean, not pitching coaches, but director of pitching in the minor leagues, right? The spin rate guy, who Trevor Bauer went to and just developed, the spin rates, and they've got rid of him, or he left, and then hitting coach, after hitting coach, bullpen pitchers. I mean, we need to have a philosophical organizational shift and how we are developing these players. And, what are we looking at? Are we only trying to get 5 innings out of our starters here? Or are we going to try to stretch them out to get 7 again? And then, then our bullpen, when we have to go 3 days in a row, we can actually go 3 days in a row instead of, well, we've got to use 10 guys to cover 7 innings in 2 days. So I think that's the big crux of the whole development key, is like, can we draft good players and can we develop them? Because that is the model that Nick Kroll has said that we have to do. We have to draft and develop. And he came out in the paper the other day, he made all these comments, and then one of the Reds beat writers, I think it was Nightingale, broke it down. And, like, okay, this is what he means by this. This is what he means by that. And Nick came out and said everybody's going to have to earn their spot on the roster, right? Even Joey Votto, even Moustakas, Nick Senzel. He even said Nick Senzel, I don't know where Nick Senzel is going to play, if he's going to play at all next year. So, and it's not just the baseball side, right? It's the medical side. That's why you got rid of the medical director, because they're not happy with why are we having so many injuries. Yes, teams have injuries, but why is it affecting us consistently? So, I think moving forward, I hope that the Reds get it right again, because this is a baseball town and we are craving for success that the Reds can have. If we could ever have success the same time the Bengals are having success, I mean, this town will be just on fire.
Well, I think it's a weird sport, because your value, your franchise, it's like buying a house, and the real estate value of your home goes up every year. But you want to make a profit on the people who you have rent it. So the Reds want to make it a business. My hope is, and the Castellinis have been great owners for a long time. It's time for an owner who's willing to accept massive operating losses for several years, because the value of his franchise is going to go up, and go for broke. We desperately need that, because you can't lose. It's an impossible proposition to lose if you buy a Major League Baseball franchise.
Well, I think that they went for broke in 2020,
did.
And they got scared off because, COVID, no attendance, and the next year attendance was limited, and this, and so
I think you're right. COVID was really devastating to a small market franchise.
But then you look at Cleveland,
yeah,
who has less attendance than us, and but they draft well, they develop well, and I think their manager he sets the tone, and that's the one thing that I said the Reds did wrong when they should have fired Dusty Baker the year before they let him go, and went after Francona when he was doing ESPN baseball analysis, and I think you bring him back to Cincinnati, I think that changes the franchise. I really do. But what's your thoughts, Crawley?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all.
Moving forward.
I agree with all that.
He said, that Rick's too dark.
No, I just, I think number one is talent acquisition. And, I think for multiple years now, their talent has been so low level, below average. I mean, you just look at the outfield right now, and all these, the new guys they got are all infielders that we're talking about going to make outfielders. But if you really look at their outfield, they have nothing. I mean, they don't have a true, like, for other MLB teams, they don't have a player that would be on a roster. Maybe Jake Fraley as a fifth, or Senzel as a fifth outfielder or something. Aquino wouldn't even be on a roster for other teams. And they have nothing in the minor leagues and for the outfield. I mean, they're going to, our whole hope is that all these shortstops they're going to get, several of those guys are going to be outfielders eventually, kind of thing. So I just look at their talent. Their talent is so low, comparable. And I put that on the owner and the front office, just very poor, drafting, development, all rolled into one. Just, they got, I think a lot of it goes to me, and I say this almost every other podcast, it goes back to the breakup of the the 2014, 13, 14 Reds, and they were just god awful in their trades. To get nothing for Aroldis Chapman, when the Yankees now, their starting shortstop for a decade is going to be a guy that they traded Chapman to the Cubs for. And they have a starting shortstop, and the Reds got zero for him. They got zero for Bruce. They got zero for, you go down on that whole long list, Frazier. Absolutely nothing. And so that's, to me, is what's put them in the spot they are right now. They have no talent on the major leagues.
Yeah.
So hopefully, the Marte, the Ellie De La Cruz, these guys that are now have talent, they hopefully will develop, Lodolo and Green, kind of, these guys. But, I put a lot of it in just the 2010s and how they dealt with the breakup of that early 2010 team.
Charlie, do you think that was an ownership problem? Because remember when Williams left as general manager, everybody went, uh-oh. And it's been nothing but trouble since.
Right. Yeah, that's why I say front office too. But
ownership. Oh my good, what happened?
So it's just, Castellini, back in the, even before that, I have to have Brandon Phillips. I got to have Brandon Phillips and pay him all this money. I got to have Homer Bailey and pay him all this money. And, that didn't help them either, but all those decisions to me, even some of those 10-year ago decisions, have put them in the place they are at. And the one decision they made that people complain about is the Votto contract. But in reality, he's given as much as he can give, and he's been a good good to great player for all these years. He's lived up to the contract. He's the only one.
I agree with you. I agree.
So, but you can't have one player live up to the contract. Baseball is the one sport, maybe football, unless you're a quarterback, but baseball is definitely a sport where where one player doesn't make a team, no matter how good that player is. If it was the case, the Angels would be in the playoffs and competing for the World Series every year, because they may have the two best players in the majors, and they're not even sniffing the playoffs anywhere close. So, that's to me all the frustrations that go along. I think it's just a series of bad decisions and bad moves, and for 15 years, 10 years, kind of thing. And now we're here where I think the city has abandoned the Reds. Like there is no talk of the Reds.
More.
The Reds are not even. FC Cincinnati has passed. FC Cincinnati has passed the Reds right now in terms of people I'm just saying out and about. Your average person walking around talking sports. FC Cincinnati, I hear a lot more from. They weren't even in existence 8 years ago. So they've passed them. Obviously, the Bengals are a million years past them at this point. So that's my worry is that the Reds they're not. It's not negative about the Reds. It's just nothing about the Reds right now. They're not even in Cincinnati people's even conscious mind even concern themselves with. So.
Charlie, I couldn't agree more. That's probably what bothers me more than anything else is the general indifference. If the Reds left tomorrow, the city would just yawn. Like I'm old enough to remember when the Royals left Cincinnati, and it was just like a yawn. And then all of a sudden, 10 years later, everybody went, "What? Did we have an NBA team?" Yes, and we had Jerry Lucas and Oscar Robertson and Connie Dirk. Wow, what happened? What did we do? Well, this guy named Kuzi came along, and I think the Reds would be the same way. They'd leave, and there would be a murmur, and then 5 years later, go, "Wait a minute, but we had a franchise." So, Charlie, right. I think you're right. I just think it does come down to leadership and management and ownership.
Yep.
Great franchises have great owners. And the Castellans were good for a while, but he's now almost 80, and Phil's a great guy, but he's volatile as all get out. And I think we need new ownership that has the willingness to say we're gonna roll the dice here because I can't lose, right? The franchise, if it doesn't work out, I'll sell it to San Jose, right?
Yep.
And just go in and go crazy. It should be the Dave Wolfers franchise. But I think that's coming. Don't you think it's coming? It has to be coming.
If it's not coming, I would say next 5 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think Castellini, you don't get into a position that he has gotten into by giving up.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's too proud, and he wants to fight. But the problem is, like you mentioned, Crawley. I mean, he owned with his heart. He loved his players, and he didn't want to trade them. And
mm-hmm.
and now it's a business, which I think the trades they made this year, hopefully it'll pan off for them. And I think they have to go with that mindset. They've got to be like the Tampa Bay Rays, the Cleveland Indians, or the Guardians now, that are willing to move a franchise player or the face of the franchise for a better return, because they know they're not going to be able to keep them after their contract is up. So, Lindor was the face of the Indians, for crying out loud, and they got rid of him. And right now, the two kids that Cleveland got, they're up the middle for them. They're in the playoffs, and when it's all said and done, they may actually have gotten a better deal than the Mets.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can do that, I think 5 to 6 years. But if not, then we need to get somebody in here who's willing to spend some money to make this team better, without sacrificing the quality of our the depth, right? Marge decimated our farm club. She went out and signed people and traded people. Trader Jim, just got rid. We can't do that. In a small market team, we have to be able to draft, but yet when the time is right, sign a free agent here and there. So,
it's tough. And we got 2 really, really tough years ahead for the Reds.
Yeah.
Very tough years.
Yeah. Next year is going to be, what I keep hoping for is a repeat of the 99 season, right? where you had all these young kids that were playing not real great, but you had a couple of veterans in, Larkin and Greg Vaughn and Shurik or Harnish were pitchers that just were fantastic, bulldog type of guys, and all of a sudden, they just kept winning and winning and winning, and it's like, hey, we can win, we can play with these guys, we can win, and unfortunately, they had to throw Steve Paris the game 163 because they couldn't beat Milwaukee. One out. They had to win two, or I can't remember, one in Milwaukee or two in Milwaukee.
Yes.
And Harnish had to go the last game, and he went 9 innings or 8 innings to get the victory, and they would have took one other game out of that, then the Mets aren't even in it. And
it's Andy Leiter, right? Beat him.
Yeah.
At the game.
Yeah.
Al Leiter, yeah.
Al Leiter.
Yeah. Just
with Ricky Henderson out in left field taunting the Reds.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
But yeah, so but yeah, it's I mean, that's what I'm hoping here, whether it's the 2023 Reds, it's probably going to be more like the 2024 Reds. Because I think, you give Green, Lodoto, Ashcraft another full year in the majors. They'll have 2 years underneath their belt, coming in 3 years. Year 3, I think that's the year, 2024, where we can hopefully say, ooh, we might have a chance here, for the Central.
And I would think in,
Good
I
point.
was going to say in 2024, they'll have zero financial commitments, like long-term financial commitments.
That's true.
And that would be the year where you'd bring in a $15 million starter, whatever that gives you, as your your fourth starter. That's with the idea that Green, Ashcraft, and Lodolo continue their progression, and that's your 3. But then you bring in another guy to be your somewhere in that top 3 or 4 starter, where you're willing to spend money on because you have no other commitments, very low commitments.
Right.
That would be the hope. And then at that point, you're starting to get some contributions from those guys in the double A lineup right now, who are your talented players. And that's the problem with the Reds right now, especially for next year, is their talent is all a double A, and that's their best players, like talent wise,
Right.
pure talent from a lineup standpoint. And that's why
Right.
they won't be the 99 team, because that they had talent on that team still. I mean, Barry Larkin wasn't he the MVP that year? I mean, he was.
Not
was he
99,
95? Was that 95? But
95,
still, he was really good that year. I mean, he was still really good.
Vaughn was unbelievable.
Vaughn was good that year.
Yeah,
I mean,
Vaughn had 45 homers that year.
The Reds don't have any.
third,
The Reds lineup is not even comparable to anywhere near that lineup.
No, it's not. But I'm hoping that the youth and stuff could catch. Like
but that
Tyler Stevenson will have.
But that won't be
another year.
Yeah, you need another.
Right.
You need those other guys. Once again, I still believe if Farmer is in the starting lineup 150 or 145 games a year, you're not winning.
Yeah,
there's my hot take right there for the Reds.
Charlie, you said, Dave, both of you guys have expressed the bottom line. What is who our beloved late Joe Morgan said? Good pitching will always be good hitting.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have 2 potential stars in the starting lineup. And you're right, Charlie. You get rid of these salaries, so you get to 2024. Now, say you get 3 good starters. Well, baseball's a funny game, right? You get I worry about the ownership on the top, but I do think that if they can have 3 good pitchers, it changes everything. Yeah, it's harder to get good pitching than it is good position players. And if you got Stevenson, we're trying to bring this up, everybody, to an optimistic situation.
That's right.
But we are going to go through some pain. Right. We're going to go through some pain.
Some growing pains, but I think it'll be, hopefully it'll be better for us here, and I just don't know. The faith in the front office is the question mark.
Yeah, I think it's management. I don't think it's the field. I think it's the decisions made up there and the willingness to take the risk.
Right. And the article did say that probably these kids that are in AA, they probably start out AAA, maybe, if they have a really good spring training, they'll go AAA. If not, they'll be AA. But you won't see them until,
I would think post All-Star break.
Yeah, post All-Star break next year or trade deadline. Then you'll see them at least get 2 months in the big leagues, see what they have, and then 2024, then they can make those decisions. Do we need to get another outfielder, or can we ride these guys? Do we have enough talent on this team to be competitive in 2024? But I know that's for another podcast here. So
all right.
We'll get going here with this. Rick, we always do some rapid fire questions for our guest. And the way this works is I've got questions here, and I will read these questions, and you can be the first one to answer, and then Crawley will answer, and I'll give my answer. So
all right.
So we always started off with, and this isn't really a question, but it's just Reds or Bengals. Who do you got? Who do you want? I mean, who's your favorite, Reds or Bengals?
Reds.
And that's pretty much everybody's here, right?
Reds.
We're
more important long term. Yeah. All summer, the Reds do well. Cincinnati looks great all summer.
There we go. All right, so here you go. First question: do you prefer going to the ballpark, watching the game on TV, or listening it to on the radio?
I still prefer going to the ballpark. I go to the Hall of Fame beforehand, walk through it, and then go to the ballpark, get myself a couple beers. And we did a lot of it this year. Yeah. And you could go right down behind the dugout. We had this time where we distract the, my wife go, hi, honey. So I still like going, because you can get good seats. Even though they're terrible, you can get good seats. Yeah.
What do you got, Crawley?
Yeah, I'd say go to the ballpark. I have not been super motivated to go to the ballpark last couple of years, even, since COVID, but if I have to pick one, it's definitely go to the game.
When I was younger, going to the ballpark all day, but now I kind of like watching it on TV, because if it's a crappy game, I can turn it off, go to bed. I don't have to drive back home, not to fight. I would say fight the crowd, but there's no crowd here in Cincinnati.
There is
but
yeah.
but
if the team is good, it's very
it's
then
so
I
would
fun
go.
to be
Yes,
there, so.
Right. Yes, and I would definitely agree there. I mean, and this is bad. I mean, I haven't been to a Reds game since I think it was Brian Price was the manager his second last year. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been down there. And I said I'm not going down there until they start winning and make a commitment to winning, and they haven't. But all right, here goes. If you go to the ballpark, like you say you do, what is your food of choice?
Always basically hot dog, and I also like a tall Bud Light. Yeah, because I'm older and I, pre-diabetic. I can't do all those IPAs, so I do a tall Bud Light with a dog and some mustard.
Nice. What about you, Crawley?
I don't really have just one food of choice. I don't usually do a hot dog. I don't do a hot dog, and I don't do any of the traditional. I don't do pretzels or anything like popcorn or anything.
You got. Are you one of those fans that bring their own little lunch?
No. I have brought Subway before. I have brought Subway sandwiches before. But I would say right now they do have Penn Station, and I love Penn Station, so I usually get Penn. It's actually fairly for as expensive as stuff there. It's not too bad of a price for that. So I would say Penn Station, and then I am an IPA guy, so I would get some some IPA.
You're younger, Charlie. You're younger,
so I get some IPA.
I'll do a traditional dog or brat. Peanuts. I'm a peanut guy. I eat the whole shell, the shell and all, man. That's me. And then any beer is available, I will drink it. So
and at 3 a.m. Dave wakes up and goes, da 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 da.
Charge. Yeah. No. So all right, this is probably more for Rick than I don't know. Crawley could be an aficionado in this as well, but I am not. So if you could only listen to one jazz musician, I know you're big in jazz, Rick.
Yes.
For the rest of your life, who you got?
Miles Davis. Hands down, Miles Davis. The ballad records. Start with Kind of Blue, 1959. take the stuff he did with Prestige in the mid-'50s, but 55 to 1963, Miles was doing all this beautiful jazz ballads, and he hired the best musicians in the world. Tony Williams, Herbie Hancock, Ron Carter. I mean, give me a break. John Coltrane, Wayne Shorter. That's my guy, Miles Davis. I wouldn't want to have dinner with him, but I would listen to him the rest of my life.
You got any jazz back there, Crowley?
Nope.
All right, if you could, we'll go any type of music.
Hold on, wait a minute, hold on before you go on. I could talk to you about the Utah Jazz if we want to talk about them a little bit. So
you want Karl Malone or John Stockton?
Yeah.
Or John Sloan.
Yeah, the Utah Jazz
Jerry Sloan
may be about as bad as the Reds are this year for this upcoming year. They literally traded everybody. So yeah. But you can move on to the next one.
All right, we'll move on to the next one. I would probably take. I mean, it's not jazz guy, but I'd bring my Buffett collection. I'm a parrot head.
There you go.
All right, favorite job as a kid or an adult?
Can I start?
Yeah, you started.
For 2 years, I was the TV critic at the Cincinnati Post. And so because Cincinnati at that time was the 24th market, I could spend 2 weeks in Hollywood interviewing TV and film stars. That was really a fun job. Met a lot of very interesting people.
Better than going to France for the air show?
Oh, absolutely. You go to Hollywood. I mean, I used to, I was sitting there, I actually shared a urinal with Larry Hagman, things like that, big stuff. But that was in the mid 80s, and it was just a fun time.
So you didn't shoot JR then?
I didn't shoot JR. I pointed his direction, but I did not shoot him. But then the problem was at the end of the day, I'd have to take my Tandy 200 computer, walk 2 blocks to a portable telephone booth to put the suction cup on that, because the phones, you had to have a certain suction cup and then press the button, go, and the story would go to the Post. That's how long ago that was. Wonderful job, though. Met a lot of crazy people. Just, famous stars.
Yep. Crawley, you got a favorite job?
Yeah, I mean, I've really just been a teacher and a coach. So, I mean, I didn't have anything. I've done that my whole life. So, or my whole adult life. So, and I didn't really have any.
Nothing as a kid?
No, I worked in a restaurant, which was god awful. I did some weird odds and end jobs I worked at Walmart when I was in college so that was probably my weirdest job, but just because of the people you run into. But pretty straightforward. So teacher, coach, yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, teacher, coach. I mean, college coaching now. I love it. That's fun. But I would say my best job ever when I was in college, I got to travel on Hill-Rom's dime across the country and changing out sleep surfaces of stretchers. And it was, kid from small town Batesville, Indiana, hit every state east of the Mississippi plus Louisiana during that summer, and it was just fantastic. I mean,
at that age, too.
At that age, I was 20 years old, just out on the road with a map, right? I mean, Chris and I talk about that. My wife and I talk about that now. It's like, would our kids be able to find the hospital with just a map, right? And just driving, west. How do you go west? I mean, it's just little things like that. But I got to see so much of the country that, I probably wouldn't have seen. And it's just the love for travel and the love for reading maps. And I think, all of my kids, when they were younger, we would read maps together, quiz them over. This is where the state is. Here's the capital, those type of things. So that was probably my favorite job. If I could do it again, I probably would just go travel and do, those kind of things. All right, here you go. You like food, Rick? So what is the best low key spot to eat in Cincinnati?
I would pick Montoya's. Getting to Montoya's, this longtime Mexican restaurant off the Buttermilk Pike exit. When you get there, it's wonderful. I love their salsas are so unique. Now, the drive's a little tricky because, there's so much construction getting over the river. But I've actually gone to Montoya's and I've lied to the waitress and said, look, I have all kinds of food allergies. So you need to tell me exactly what's in your hot sauce so I won't have any kind of reactions. And the owner comes out and says, he says that every time. He's just lying. But it'd be Montoya's Mexican restaurant off the Buttermilk Pike exit. I just love that place. Been there a long, long time.
Crawley, what do you got? You got anything?
Low key.
Nothing like no Jeff Ruby's, that kind of stuff. Just somewhere where you would go. What's almost like not quite a dive bar, but just
Well, I think
come in
when Rick said the Mexican place, my favorite. It's pretty low key. There's a place called Mazunte, which is over on Madison Road near Red Bank.
Oakley.
So that's probably my favorite taco, that kind of place in the city. And so whenever I don't live that close to it, so when I get a chance to get over there, it's special to get over there and get that. I just love that place. So I'd say there.
And the beer is on ice. Ow.
Yep. We don't go out a ton. I like Terry's Turf Club, or the Turf Club now, I guess it's not Terry's anymore, but that was always nice. And there's a place over in Madeira. It's tucked in, little Italian place.
By the railroad tracks.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was, it was nice. It was just sit back in there, and that's a nice little place as well. I can't remember the name. It's been a couple years since Chris and I went there, but it was real good food. We were the only people in there. It was great. All right, this is for Rick and Crawley. We can adapt it for you and me. So here we go. When driving with Jane, and by the way, Jane's Rick's wife.
Okay.
Who decides what you're listening to in the car? And what would it be?
I decide.
She will be listening to this, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But I tend to decide. However, we listen to a lot of WGUC classical music in the car. And because one of the things I find out when I do Spotify, I get distracted too much. I'm not watching the road very well. So we kind of actually agree on this pretty well, because if we do GUC or listen to classical, it reduces the chances I'm going to get in an accident. She likes bad company, and so if I put on Spotify, she'll say, "I want my bad company." I'm like, "Oh, no way, baby." So, but
you know why she wants bad company, right? What's their best song?
Feel like making love.
There you go.
You got it. So, but no, we listen to a lot of GUC in the car just because it's simple and I don't get too distracted. Yeah, I like that. What
about you, Crawley, when you're driving with your boys?
Oh, they definitely ain't making a decision with that. So, we're gonna listen to. I don't know. I'm trying to think of what. I'll go anywhere from hair bands to 80s, 90s hair bands to regular, even like 70s rock kind of stuff. So that would be my go-to. So Queen to Motley Crue to Metallica, somewhere in that genre.
Nice. When Chris and I are in, we're usually listening to podcasts. So we'll be listening to, Mike Rowe, The Way I Heard It podcast, and then a couple of other podcasts along the way. We'll listen to the Tony Kornheiser show if I missed one, or the college, Cover 3 podcast, college football. So, and then she'll listen to one of her podcasts that she listens to. I can't remember the name of it, but she likes it. I think it's a couple of those murder or the accused or something like that, those type of crime podcasts. All right. Books or movies?
Favorite books or movies?
No, just would you prefer reading a book or going to a movie?
Depends on the film. I like film noir, so we're a film noir family. So we like a lot of 1940s, black and white, shadowy, Double Indemnity, Maltese Falcon, that type of thing. So if it's a good film noir, that's pretty hard to beat. If it's in the afternoon, the sun's out, Saturday afternoon, I like reading the back. Yeah, I read a lot of nonfiction. but my whole family loves film noir. I mean, my daughter, my son. He poor kid's 35. He's a man out of time, and so we love film noir.
Yeah, I would probably say movies. I like the idea of reading more than I actually do reading. So, I like reading, and I always have ideas of reading a lot more than I do. I do like kind of, when Rick said about, certain times of the day, I like Saturday morning, kind of thing, or, go for me, it'd be the front porch because that's the sun's on my back porch at that time. So, kind of nice, especially in the summer when I don't have anything, when I can kind of do it without thinking about, well, what do I need to be at 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock, whatever. So, but yeah, it's probably going to be going, seeing a movie in reality. So.
I'm probably more of a book guy. I don't know what it is. I just like reading books. I'm not much of a movie guy as I get older. So there we go. All right, Rick. The top 3 sports moments for you in Cincinnati history.
Oh, wow. Well, right off the bat, 3.
Top 3.
Sports moments. Oh, my goodness. Well, 1972, Game 5 playoffs, Pirates, 9th inning, Reds down by 1 run. Dave Justy's on the mound. Johnny Bench comes up, smacks a home run, ties the game. George Foster then is the runner for Tony Perez. Gets all the way to third, and Mile Michaels goes, "It's a wild pitch!" Scores, and they're in the World Series. So the 72, I would say playoffs. I'd say the 75 World Series, Game 7 was a stunner because you thought they lost. And they came back. Tony Perez hit the home run. That was a really, really beautiful moment. So sports moment-wise, those again, those were great Reds moments. I'm going to give you a weird sports moment, really, for the third. And when I was a kid, I was a music major in college, and I played keyboards my whole life. And when I was a kid, 11 years old, in Finneytown, where Curves is today on Winton Road, was a Hammond organ store. And I walked in, and Ronnie Dale, the Crosley Field organist, was in there playing. Oh, my goodness. I thought I was seeing one of the Beatles, right? Because, Ronnie Dale was this awesome organist on Crosley Field. He was the one who invented charge. First organist to introduce that. Got kicked out of a game for doing it by an umpire. The only organist ever kicked out of a baseball game. Else did the Mexican hat dance in the late 60s. So Ronnie Dale was playing in Finneytown. He used to give lessons at what is now the Curve store on Winton Road, and I saw Ronnie Dale as a kid and walked in and thought, oh, my goodness, there he is, the great one. So it's a musical sports moment.
Nice. Crawley, you got top 3?
Top and any Cincinnati sports moment, we're saying?
Yep.
I'll start with, and it's tough. Number 1 is the 1990 Reds World Series. I just don't, it's hard for me to pick one moment. Probably the Joe Oliver hit and what's his name runs across, Billy Bates runs across, scores on that. So maybe that one. I remember just going crazy when that happened.
Mm-hmm.
But there's so many good moments from that series. But I'll pick, if I pick a moment, I'll go there. 88, the Bengals beating the Bills in the AFC Championship game. Ooh, I love Boomer Esiason. That's my favorite Bengal team of all time. Even more than the Burrow Bengals just now. Maybe just being more cynical and old or whatever. But so I'd say that. And I just remember that 88 team, or that game was the Marv Levy, what a bum he was, complaining about what the Bengals, the speed up offense or the hurry up, and then freaking Marv Levy then did it every year after that, just stole it. And, I hated Marv Levy, like absolutely hated Marv Levy for that hypocrite nonsense. And then my other one is UC versus Notre Dame last year, because I was there, and that's my favorite all time live sports, Cincinnati sports moment. I've never,
stunning.
I didn't go to the 90 World Series. I didn't go to any of those things. So for a live sports moment, that's my number 1. So I'd put that as my third one. So
Good one.
That's nice. That is good. So my top three, probably, the first one's 41-92, Pete Rose. I think that's, history in the making, right? 75-76, Big Red Machine. Those two World Series back-to-backs is another one. And then I think in 81, the Freezer Bowl game.
Oh, Freezer.
When the
San
Bengals,
Diego, right?
yeah, when they beat, Eric Coryell, and during that, for the first time to go to the Super Bowl. I think that was probably there's big three moments for me. But yeah, there's a lot of them, but
we've had good ones.
We've had real good ones in Cincinnati. You're right. Okay, question number 9. If money, time, or place were not restrictions, what is one thing on your bucket list that you would do tomorrow?
Oh, my. Money, no restraint, anything.
Yep, if you had a blank check, here you go. Check one thing off your bucket list. What would it be?
There's places I still, haven't been to, I guess, haven't been to the Great Wall. Traveling GE, I was very fortunate because I saw a lot of cool things. I guess I'd just spend more time on the ocean with Jane, hang out in blue ocean, that kind of thing, a little slower. I think I'd do that. I've never been to an Olympics, so I'd like to go to an Olympics. That'd be good. Yeah, I've never been to Olympics, so. Oh, that's a tough question.
Winter or summer Olympics?
Summer. Oh, track and field. That's a good question, though. Yeah, right. Time or money? Just get the best seats you could possibly get for a good sporting event would be neat. Yeah, that's good.
Well, you're going to check off there, Crawl Dog, on that bucket list. Going to Vermont, hitting all the breweries.
I already did that one.
No, but not in the hoity-toity Northern Kingdom.
That's
Northern
true.
Kingdom.
Yeah, the Northern Kingdom. That's right. Visit the Northern Kingdom. Yeah, it'd be travel for me. And again, if I had more time to think, maybe I'd think of something different. But the first thing that came to my mind was I would go to the British Isles and travel around the British Isles. That's actually not number one on my list. Like Australia, New Zealand is always number one, but I'm always thinking of that with the parameters of how much it costs and how long I would need. So with the way you worded your question, I'd go to the British Isles and spend as much time as I needed to go Scotland and Wales and England and Ireland and just go around and hit all those places. And my number one thing on my bucket list, being a big soccer fan, is to go to a Premier League soccer game. And so I'd go to London and I could hit all the London soccer stadiums. Like that's my number one sporting event bucket list item, is go to a Premier League, just because it's, to me, and I've only ever seen it on TV. It's just, it's an experience that no American sport rivals what they do in British soccer. Right. So I'd hit. Yep. So I would include that in my travel. So
nice. It's kind of funny because I would say, go to Scotland. Last couple of years, Chris and I have been watching a lot of British shows, and the Scottish, Scotland, the islands, and the British Isles itself. I just want to be able to go over there and just see it here and play some golf, do that kind of thing. All right, last question here. Game 7 of the World Series is two-parter. Who's taking the ball for the start for you? And what player is in the batter's box with the winning run on second base, 2 outs in the bottom of the 9th for you?
I'm going to cheat a little bit because Johnny Benchoy said if he had to pitch a Game 7, it'd be Tom Seaver or Jim Palmer.
I'm going to say, let me say the Reds.
Oh, just the Reds.
Just the Reds. Yes. Sorry. Sorry, just the Reds.
Pitcher for me would be Jim Maloney in his prime. Jim Maloney in his absolute prime would be my pitcher for Game 7. And for your hitter with the guy on base, it has to be the dog. Tony Perez just had a way with people on base, and we all love that. But Jim Maloney, as Ben said recently, was one of the greatest right-handed pitchers in the history of baseball. And it's just circumstances. He's been kind of a forgotten guy. Jim Maloney and the doggy.
I'll go
Chicky.
Yeah,
Tracy Jones.
maybe Paul Householder.
Hey, if you're taking hell over Aquino,
um,
just do.
Goodness, pitcher. I'll go Jose Rio. I mean, he proved it in '90 World Series what he was on. When the money was on the line. So I'll go Rio, and then I'll go Joe Morgan, just because
good choice.
I think that for a singular season, or maybe 2 seasons, not for a whole career, but for 1 or 2 seasons, he's the best Red ever.
Yeah.
So I'll go Joe Morgan.
Wow. Those were my 2 exactly. I mean, Rio and Morgan. I thought about Perez because, he would drive in. I mean, he was just a RBI machine, but, Game 7, Morgan had that little blue pit.
Yep.
And I think he's the guy. So yeah.
Great.
That was
all good answers.
So,
but
all right.
But the interview with Tony Perez at the end would be better because he'd say, "Oh, Joe, I hear him.
That is true. All right. Well, we're running a little long here, but that's okay. We had a great time.
13-10 Ravens right now, 7.5 minutes in the third quarter. Tucker Tucker hit some long field goal, but the Bengals are driving right now.
All right. Awesome. So, sorry we don't have any Bengals, instant reactions, but we'll get 2 of them next week for you. But we would love to thank our guest Rick Kennedy for joining us and talking Reds. A couple of things, Rick. If somebody wants to take a tour, how do they do that? Second thing.
The best thing to do for Spring Grove Tour, because I always get in trouble. If I do it privately, you can buy me a beer. I'll take you on a tour. But the website's great. There's all kinds of sites. You can go to the website, and they organize tours all the time. And one of us do it. And it's fun.
Second thing, you are writing a book. Mm-hmm. You've published a book already, correct?
Yeah, I wrote 2 music books, and then I wrote the history of GE Aviation, and now I'm working on a book under contract on Shepherd Chemical. That's a business proposition, but I'm in the process. I want to finish a book. 2 books I want to do in the future. One is called Mid-Century Finneytown, and I'm in the process of a book on a guitar player named Scotty Anderson. So, but the Shepherd book will pay for the ones that lose money.
And then finally, let's see, author that, and then I think that's all I had there. So. Hopefully you come back and we'll talk Reds again as we get, closer to the Hot Stove League and stuff like that. But we appreciate you for coming on and spending some time on a Sunday evening. And
it's intimidating with such knowledgeable people like Dave and Charlie. Let me tell you, you guys know your stuff. It's great. I think what you do is a fantastic service.
Oh, we appreciate that. But you're the encyclopedia of Reds history and just knowledge of Finneytown here. So we can't be more grateful for you for coming on and just sharing your wisdom. So we appreciate that. And once again, if you like what you're hearing, please hit that like and subscribe button. You can find us on all your podcasting platforms. And for Sam, who's not here today, for Charlie right there and Rick Kennedy, I am Dave Wolfers. Have a great evening, folks. Take care.
See ya.
Charge.